This episode of Pool Magazine Podcast is proudly brought to you by Master Pools Guild, an exclusive network of over 100 elite custom pool builders represented from all across the globe, each carefully chosen for their exceptional skills, reputation, and outstanding ability in swimming pool design and construction. Established in 1962, the MPG name has become a hallmark for elite quality pool building. We've created a network for the world's most talented pool builders to consult, inspire, and support each other. To learn more about the Guild and what membership has to offer, visit us on the web at masterpoolsguild.com.
Welcome back to the Pool Magazine Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Joe Trusty, and today we're diving deep into the shimmering world of glass tile. And with me is returning guest Jimmy Reed, the undisputed master of high-end tile installation, and a guy whose work you've seen in some of the most elite pool projects in the country. Also joining us is my good friend Frank Vittori, a top distributor of premium glass tile. He knows what's hot, what's trending, and what sells. Together, we're talking all things Bisazza today. Jimmy, you're probably the most qualified out of all three of us here today to talk on the subject, but can you give our listeners who don't know your impressive background and repertoire, can you give us a little bit of your bio and your history with all tile pool applications and talk a little bit about your company and what it is that sets your firm apart?
Sure. Good to be here with you guys again. Of course, my company name is Rock Solid Tile, and we do all tile swimming pools. I would say 90% of it is glass, and sometimes other materials like ceramic or porcelain or stone, different mediums. But what we do is we focus on swimming pools, glass tile pools mostly, and we've been doing this for well over 3 decades.
Awesome. Thanks for that. I mean, we're going to be talking about the highest of the high end today and discussing Bisazza. I mean, what was your first project where you used Bisazza tile? Do you remember what you thought of it back then? And what does the Bisazza brand represent to you as a craftsman?
The first Bisazza project was way back in the 70s, I say, probably early 80s. And it was a bathroom, and I had never done a glass mosaic install before. And it was also the first time I had seen paper-faced material. At that time, we did the installation with a traditional cementitious thin set, embedded the sheets into the thin set, and then, of course, left it until the next day to pull the paper off. We didn't know really what the process was at that time, the proper process for installing and removing paper and so forth. So we came back and pulled the paper, and all the thin set had oozed through the joints, which I thought was the way it was supposed to be. So we spent a good amount of the time cleaning the paper and cleaning the thin set off the face of the tile where it did ooze out of the joints. And that's what our finished product ended up being. So that was really our first experience with not just Bisazza, but any glass mosaic material. As far as what Bisazza represents to me is it represents really the cream of the crop glass mosaic surfaces. I should say one of those positions. There are other materials that are just, when I say just as nice, it's really all subject to personal taste. I can't really say one is better than the other. Some people prefer the looks of other materials and also different lines of the manufacturers. So a lot of them do just represent the highest of the highest end material available for glass finishes.
I'll just chiming in to carry that point a little further, Jimmy. You know, as a distributor, we represent many brands, including Bisazza, but of course, Sea Cheese, Murine Mosaics. You know, there's a lot of big names out there in the industry. We followed you for a long time, undisputed, top-notch all-tile pool installer out there in California. I've just always been curious, you know, what makes you truly a Bisazza guy? What is it? I know you mentioned personal tastes and preferences, but is there anything about the line that just speaks to you at Rock Solid?
I'm a loyal guy, and since that first experience with Bisazza, I've found that I would deal with distributors at that time, and even the support that they got at the time when we would have issues or questions or just getting to be enthused about the product, they've been there since the beginning, from the beginning for me. And so, like I say, I'm a loyal guy, and that's a big thing to me. Connection and communication and support. Again, not to say that other companies don't offer that as well, and I experience the same kind of relationships, but
Sure.
I mean, Bisazza's been there since the beginning, and it was a step up from, traditional interiors to this, to me, new material to install. And it was a lot about the enthusiasm.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I couldn't agree with you more. I believe transparency and service is paramount in this industry, right? It's all relationship driven. I think you and I actually, even though we're on separate coasts, have a lot of mutual friends. And we brought on Bisazza a little over a year ago, and I've got nothing but great things to say about Mark Thomas and Claudio Tambor over there. In fact, I think we're actually going to be trying to get him on to one of these things in the near future.
How do designers and homeowners respond when you're going through different options with them and then you bring up the subject of Bisazza and you start showing them what that tile looks like? I mean, are they tend to be drawn to one product more so than the other when you go for these really high-end projects, Jimmy?
That really just depends on the project itself and, the tastes of the designers and their clients, the homeowners ultimately. So if I'm ever presenting Bisazza or any other material, it's for a specific reason. If I'm doing a California bungalow situation, Bisazza is not necessarily going to fit in, so I'll present something else. But a lot of the projects, a lot of these high-end, from MCM to all the way up to the most modern homes being built, Bisazza definitely fits into most of those design profiles. So when it's brought up, whether I bring it up or designers bring it up, it's nothing. Nobody is shocked at anything about it. I mean, except for the excitement aspect. But it's not like, oh my God, we can't use that, or is that going to be within our budget? It's usually an appropriate presentation. To put it that way.
Here's a good question for both of you, I guess. I mean, because Frank, you're heavy from the distribution side, and Jimmy, you're more so focused on the installation side. I mean, are there any more frequently requested styles or collections that consumers are asking for when they're requesting Bisazza tile?
My point of view, most of the stuff we do with Bisazza is either in like the Legem series or a custom blend. Sometimes they have several stock blends that are, all very beautiful and fit in somewhere. But a lot of the times when we're doing blends, I like to add or take a little something away just to make it a little more personal for the client. And it makes the client feel really good too, like they're getting something tailored specifically for them, even if it's a real slight tweak on a stock blend. But I like creating blends for clients. It gives them an opportunity to kind of get their hands into it as well.
Yeah, I can share that sentiment from our perspective here at Aqua Blue and what we've seen. We've had the line up for a little over 6 months now, and we're an authorized brand partner with Bisazza North America. But, for everyone listening, what that means is Bisazza North America is stocking about 52 or 56 SKUs, everything shipping out of New Jersey these days. There's about 3 different collections that are showcased. There's the Opera. I have made mixed reviews about Opera. I think it might be more for
Why is that?
Opening up a can of worms here a little bit, I think. But it's that whole conversation, especially with you West Coast guys, about translucent glass. The Opera series.
It's a little bit larger format also.
Yeah, it's 1x1. It's got the translucency to it. Personally, for me, I think like waterline applications, smaller applications, perfectly fine. Definitely for like coastal home appeal, interiors, outdoor kitchens. But when customers are asking for Bisazza, we're steering them toward the Vetricolor. And I would say the hottest seller for us is usually the blends to kind of coincide with what you were talking about, Jimmy. And it's typically the pool colors, like a dark blue, a light blue, an aqua, some of the iridescent blacks, like the Aside is a good one for us, as well as that Sophia and Audrey. Higher end clients, they don't mind taking the time, when they're dealing with an architect or a designer and they want something truly special. The whole customization aspect of it really lights them up when it comes to the Bisazza product.
Yeah, I mean, are there any misconceptions maybe about the Bisazza tile in the North American market that you guys can see?
I think Jimmy hit it on the head earlier. I think there's some fear potentially about the face mounting because it's paper face. If I could tell you, Florida market, a lot of guys they don't know how to work with it. But as far as price point, it's not out of reach.
Actually, the retro series.
Yeah, it's modestly priced. It's not, for a luxury product, I think it's quite achievable.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think as far as misconception goes, yeah, it's not because it's Bisazza and it's glass tile. It's not, $1,000 a foot. Not every single line that they have is the most expensive thing you can imagine. So they, as I said earlier, they have several different lines, which are, at all different price points. That would be one misconception, I think. And then also appropriate areas for it to be installed is something definitely to be thought about and decided upon. What you were saying before about the new opera series, or fairly new opera series, a lot of it is translucent and some more than others. So I would recommend the installers and clients to be skeptical about those types of materials, especially in a pool. I think for interiors, it's not as critical. You can see through it if there are bubbles and things like that, impurities and whatever. But it's critical in a pool because all that is magnified and things live in water. It's not necessarily a failure if it's just visual, but there's nobody that can really take up the slack on that. I mean, that to me, that goes back to the design decisions. So misconceptions are glass is glass. I've seen it in a pool before, therefore it's all glass will work in my pool.
Mhm. Let me ask you a question because the two of you touch base on one product that is a commonality in both markets in Florida and here on the West Coast, and that's the color blending. I mean, how do you approach color blending, especially when working with the gradients or those translucent pieces?
Personally, I try to stay away from translucent across the board. I mean, certainly we've done plenty of projects where it was a necessary part of the design. Not that there are aspects of our installation that don't require care or ultimate care, but with translucent, it's just one more step beyond. So it's not that it can't be done, it's just that it's very easy for anything that happens under the glass to be seen.
I'm curious, I got a technical question about the translucent glass. So, I mean, customers do request it from time to time. I'm very much like you. You got some years on me, Jimmy, but I started my career in the pool industry back in like 2008 as a sales director for Noble Tile. And so I've been around, I've had lots of conversations with, pool builders, contractors, a lot of high profile guys. And when the topic of translucency comes up, it always comes down to the installation. And some people are like, nope, you can't do it at all, or you need to utilize the right products. So for example, we're a lead call house. I know you're also a lead call guy, mutual friend Kurt Rapp. But can you use translucent, if you're doing Lido elastic, for example, and back buttering the tile so that when you press it together, you're pushing out all the air bubbles. I know this is like a hot topic that is controversial in our industry.
So here's my take on that and kind of what I was getting to. The installation material. So when the guys are saying, no, it can't be done, or you have to use the right product. For me, the product is super important, but more importantly is the technique of the installation. Because I was going to say earlier that anything that you end up seeing under translucent glass in a pool, just because other material you don't see it. I mean, that whatever's happening under there is happening under all glass tile in pools. Just the translucency makes it visible, and that's where people freak out, rightfully. But if you have a completely opaque glass, that doesn't mean that those discolorations and impurities are not happening under that glass tile. So yes, number one, products like Lidocal's Lead Elastic, which we use religiously, that's very important. But the installation of it, the technique, and ensuring that you have, as you mentioned, minimal air and the most contact to the back of the tile material itself is crucial. I mean, we always go for 100% coverage. Whatever organizations require, 95 or 98%, that's great. And people need to adhere to that. We try to go above and beyond that. And by checking every few hours, pulling a random sheet up and, inspecting the back, that's a way to, double check your installation, make sure you're getting as much air out as possible.
This is not the most easiest tile in the world to install. I mean, what are your techniques for keeping the install perfect over, say, curves and steps and complex geometry? I see that in a lot of the pools that you guys do.
Yeah, the technique is what we organically evolve with on the job. I mean, every job is different. And as I say often, that every job is alive. I mean, there is no exact, at least for us, there is no exact technique in how we're going to deal with this, floor to wall transition the same in every single pool. So a lot of it is playing it, as we get it.
Sure. I mean, can you tell us about maybe a time when you had to really push the limits of what's possible with Bisazza? I mean, have you had any like white knuckle installs that turned into showpieces?
I can't say white knuckle, but plenty of showpieces. I mean, a lot of the projects, most of the projects, I mean, I gotta say, I've done this for a while, and so nothing is really a surprise or something that I don't often run into things that I've never seen before. And, by doing something, anything that you do for so long, even when those big challenges come up, the resolution is usually fairly easy. So I can't say that there are white knuckle moments that I've been biting my nails on and can't sleep about. But there are some unique projects. A couple of Palm Desert, California projects were quite unique, just in the scope of them, the size of them for residential pool projects, and also being approximately 25,000 square feet of glass on each one. Also, every single perimeter being infinity. There's a lot of technical pressure in those situations. We did just finish one a couple year ago or so here in California, where the owners are art dealers and their daughter is actually an accomplished artist. And we were given a painting that the daughter did, and we did this in partnership with Bisazza. We digitized it and blew it up to scale to fit the bottom of the pool, and then created custom gradient blends on all the walls and spa and entryway and so forth. And, created this absolute, as you say, showstopper, the showpiece. The floor art piece was in 10 millimeter material, and all the walls were in the 20 millimeter, 3/4 inch. So that was one of those showpiece projects.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the personalization and the versatility of the product is fantastic. It's something that we love and gravitate to. You know, as you specialize in all tile pools primarily, what percentage do you see from your customers that want to do customization versus picking something that's more standard, like one of their stock blends or the Heme series?
I would say most of it is stock, semi-stock stuff. And that again would depend on, like, a lot of times I'm brought into a project where they have, multiple design teams already sign on to the projects. Those decisions are already made. And whether they're custom blending or custom making something, which usually they're not, or usually they're choosing some stock material. Most of the custom stuff is done with me bringing that option to the table.
Let me ask you a question, Jimmy. What makes a Bisazza job different from working with other brands like Sea Cheese or Oceanside or any of the other brands you use?
I think the only real difference, like all of our preparation process, is pretty much the same across the board, regardless of the finished material. The biggest difference with those three that you mentioned are basically the size of the material. Most of the sea cheese material, unless it's a random pattern type, most of it is a 5/8 material. Most Bisazza material is 3/4 inch. Most Oceanside is 1 inch. They're pretty much doing, their most popular one now is 1 inch. That's really the only difference. Doing radiuses like stair bullnose and things like that, those type of transitions, a little bit more difficult with the larger material, but nothing that can't be accomplished pretty easily. Again, that is just the difference in size of how you lay the project out. When we get it from the shell, from the raw pool shell, our process from that shell out to our waterproof surface, waterproofing membrane, and then the adhesive installation, application, and installing the tile itself, that's pretty much the same process.
We know you work with a lot of the builders, Frank. I mean, what kind of questions do you want to ask Jimmy about, what builders should be asking?
I don't know how detailed Jimmy of a technical conversation Jimmy wants to get into, but we get the questions all the time. For example, TCNA it's a guideline. It's not law. but it says 95% clearance on the back of the tile. So there's always this back and forth, primarily between West Coast, East Coast guys. It's got to be West Coast guys are all, it's got to be face mounted product, 100% clearance, go with the Bisazza, go with the Murine Mosaics. East Coast guys in Florida, they want mesh, and it's a hot topic. It's always a hot button. As a distributor, I'm always in the hot seat because, we have to be something to everyone, but also offer a reliable product. I mean, on that notion, we brought up sea cheese, let's say, as a contender here to Bisazza. We distribute sea cheese as well. The Murano series comes on a fiber mesh. Now, here you have a globally recognized brand that definitely doesn't have 95% clearance on the back of the tile because of its mesh. But according to Sea Cheese, it's a proprietary mesh. It's a fibrous mesh. Using the right glue so that you don't have any of this spooging or additional glue that's going to hinder or mess with your bond to the thin set versus, Bisazza, which is primarily paper face. I mean, is there a way to maybe squash that disbelief, address that on this podcast? What are your thoughts on that, Jimmy?
I wouldn't dispute either of those points of views, but I would say to the builders that are asking the question, get the manufacturer to back up the approval of it and how appropriate it is on paper.
Have the manufacturer put their money where their mouth is.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, and you should do that on every project, regardless of, what the material is. I mean, you want backup. You don't want somebody just saying, yeah, it's going to work in a pool, and then a year later, all the tiles sitting on the bottom of the pool. They said it was okay, but if it's not on paper, it doesn't matter what you thought somebody told you. I mean, it's always important to get verification, of how appropriate the material is for the application.
Cool.
There are other.
You don't mind answering the questions. I hear them all the time. I speak with you, I speak with Jeff Hampy, Danilo Bonanza. I like, as a distributor, I try to educate myself so that I can set my customers up for success. But some of the other things we hear out there quite often is, I really only push Kurt's product. I only really push Lidocol because I believe in an epoxy-based system. I just think, I'd like to get your take on epoxy versus cementitious for installation. That's something that comes up in conversation every day at AquaBlue. Why do I only sell epoxy based?
We prefer the epoxy, obviously, for the bond strength of epoxy and the lead elastic, the flexibility that it has combined with that bond strength. I mean, that's like the missing link in the glass tile application. They do, by the way, have cementitious thin sets that are appropriate for glass. Their K100 is an amazing product. Yeah. But as far as the answer to the epoxy question is, we do it because it's the best available. We've not seen another product better than this. Some of the other epoxies that are on the market, the problem I see with those is that they lack the flexibility that the product like Lead Elastic has. And to me, that's key because the glass moves at a much different rate than the substrate moves. And that is the biggest issue. That is the biggest issue with glass tile installations, is the movement rate of the material versus the substrate.
Interesting. When it comes to the grout, do you find that the grout is more flexible than other epoxy grouts?
I do. I mean, it may be on a microscopic level or a very technical level, but it's also much easier to use. I'm talking about the Lead Elastic, the Starlike Evo grout. For us, it's the easiest to use. It's also the safest environmentally. And I do need to say, though, with any epoxy system, and especially the Lead Elastic system, the Lidocol system, there is a learning curve to this. And if you jump into this type of installation system without taking the time to get familiar with it, that can be a problem. And I always tell people that are asking about it, you read the specs. Don't be afraid to call Tile Doctor. They have a support team there that is available and very helpful.
Robert's excellent.
You're not used to, regardless of it. I mean, whether it's tile installation or, using a new tool. I mean, you want to know what you're up for.
Have you had any, here's an interesting one that came up I don't know why we don't promote this as much, or maybe it should be promoted more, but using Starlike Evo grout as a single step method.
Have we done that? Yes, definitely. We've done that. In fact, the project I was talking about with the art piece on the bottom of the pool floor, we did that we used the lead elastic as our waterproof membrane. So we
Okay.
had a white backdrop. And again, that material, that was a 10 millimeter material. So we installed it with crystal Starlike. Because I mean, also there were many colors, probably 100 different colors in this giant piece of art. So to pick, one grout color and not make it look digitized, especially with a tiny material, would have been impossible.
Yeah.
So I opted for crystal, which is clear, and we used that on the floor for the adhesive as well. So we were able to install the sheets into the clear grout, and any oozing in the joints wasn't really as much of a factor after cleaning, because it was clear and it was just picking up the color of the individual tile, and then grouted it again right away with the crystal grout. So that was a really cool installation. And that's going back to one of the questions from Joe. So that is an example of how we just came up with a solution to something on site. It was just, we were looking at it, thinking about how we're going to get this installation. Also, I always think I always tell my guys, think about tomorrow. Don't just do today what you need done today. So looking at this beautiful multicolored 10 millimeter mural, I was thinking about how is that going to work? Because I knew that grout was going to come up eventually. So that's when I decided we're going to install this with crystal and grout it right away.
Yeah, we absolutely love that Starlike crystal grout. And Joe, and for the listeners, if you're not familiar with it, we also refer to it as the chameleon grout because, and Jimmy, right, as long as the tile is through body in color, the grout will actually grip and pull and radiate that color from the sides. So the trick is to have a solid tile or have the color present on the sides of the tile in order for it to work properly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it out in the wild. I've seen Kurt Rapp's demonstrations of it. It's really beautiful result that you get from using that product. But let me ask you a question, Jimmy. I mean, what questions should builders really be asking their tile installer before specifying for Bisazza?
Do you know what you're doing? And whatever they answer, the way they answer should
We've
give
seen
you
it. I can speak from experience because we've not a lot of calls, but it happens from time. I'm sure you experience this too. But customers, hey, it's not sticking to my wall, and they send us pictures, and they installed Bisazza backwards with the paper to the wall.
Wow.
It happens, man. It definitely happens.
Yeah.
I don't know how, but it happens.
Yeah. So, I mean, experience is just so important. I don't know how else to answer that, but yeah, the question is, do you know what you're doing, and prove it? Tell me what your experience.
Let's talk about pricing for a minute. I mean, no need to name any numbers, but is Bisazza kind of priced out of reach for the average backyard, or is it more accessible than people think?
We touched on that a little earlier, and it really depends on the line that you're looking at. There are some fairly expensive lines of Bisazza glass mosaic tile, but there are also some very reasonably priced lines that are equally as beautiful. Again, the beauty of the tile is really in the eye of the beholder. So, you can get some of their glass mosaic material for very good prices that are equally as beautiful as some of the high-end ones.
Jimmy, do you want to talk about one of your projects that features Bisazza?
Let me think. There's a few. Okay, I can there's a handful of them. We did a project in Los Angeles. We completed it about a year and a half ago or so. And we did this is a good example of a Bisazza blend that we used, but it was a stock Bisazza blend called Elide. And this was a process where I was brought in very early on, before the pool was even dug. And I was given the opportunity to work directly with the client with no designer in the middle. Of course, they had a design team for the interior, but they were able to give me the design direction for the pool and spa. So I did go through a series of custom blends and with different colored grouts. And we just finally settled on the Elide blend, which is a stock blend. So it made it easy to order. Not that it's difficult to order a custom blend, but it was just a very smooth process. It was a very long rectangular shaped pool for a huge property in Brentwood. And it was one depth. The pool is 4 feet deep consistently. And it was a square transition pool with a beautiful, elegant entry that was the width of the pool was a full entry, and a spa that spilled into the pool. There was in the pool itself. And it was just a very clean, classic, and simple looking pool. It wasn't like outlandish or extravagant at all in as far as the design or the color of the material itself. And that's what I really tend to try to go for anyway, is a classic look that's not going to get, visually too loud over time or get tired of it. That was a really perfect pool, I thought.
Sure. I'm looking at the tile itself. It looks like a really timeless look. I mean, especially compared to some of the other blends that they have in their selection.
Yeah, it's really pleasing, real soft, just elegant looking blend.
Yeah. You want to talk about another project, Jimmy?
Sure. Yeah, I was talking about, I might have mentioned earlier, we did another project here in Los Angeles. This is going back a few years, but we did the damask opal design, which is the damask design and the opal color was a dark blue and black mix of black background with a blue detail in the design. And that was a really cool pool that the pool was recently shot at the time we were brought in, meaning it was a new pool. But when we were brought in, I opted to change a lot of the interior of the pool itself. We made it slightly shallower. We made the pool floor gracefully go up the back wall, which was the face of the spa, and made the side transitions of the pool square. That again had an elegant entry left to right. The width of the pool was the full entry, was the full width. And it was just a beautiful, clean pool, even though the design itself was pretty intense.
We know it's hard to connect the dots about what these projects look like on an audio podcast, but Jimmy, maybe you'll be gracious enough to give us a few photos that we can use for the article that we write about this conversation.
Of course.
Yeah, Jimmy, one thing I wanted to ask you, I mean, we could talk about one of these projects, maybe it's in the photos, but since we've been following you, I've always seen that, I think you say what, the devil's in the details. I think rock solid. I've always seen that your craftsmanship always comes down to the finest details, like how the corners come together, maybe incorporating a little bit of a design at the edge of a step or a bench. Just the way you guys do it's really quite beautiful. It's very subtle, but classic.
It's subtle. It takes a long time. Each of those corners takes several hours. But yeah, we have a kind of a signature detail that I like to implement the outside and inside corners, especially if it's a radius situation. But on steps, the outside corners, inside corners, we just do like a little kind of I call it a tailored or a stitching of the mosaic instead of just like mitering in quarters.
Also imagine that a lot of attention to detail in the prep work has to be on point in order for those tiles and the mosaic to come together appropriately in order to be able to get that perfect edge.
Yeah, that's true. And really that comes down to the layout from the beginning. As I mentioned earlier, we always think about what about tomorrow? What about the next week? How is this going to work? I mean, the layout is critical, whether it's wall to wall or outside corner stair details. It's pretty intense. Like the carpenters always say, measure twice, cut once. So it's kind of the same thing.
Well, Jamie, I'm going to leave you with this final question. I mean, there's only a handful of guys in the country providing the level of craftsmanship that you guys offer. Where do you see the trend of all tile pools going?
I really love what's happening with glass. People always, it comes up a lot in the shows every year, what the next trend is going to be. Next year, everything's going to change. And I just don't see that. I see new materials being introduced and starting to be used, like the large format glass and the thin porcelain and so forth. But I wouldn't say that's a trend that's going to take over the industry. I think glass mosaic, especially, is a tried and true medium for water features. And it has been for, thousands of years. So I don't really see that changing a whole lot. We will continue to see different materials being introduced. I love ceramic pools. I love making ceramic tile or ordering, having custom ceramic tile made for pools. But As far as trending, I think probably the large format is going to continue to come on strong. I see glass, though, staying in the lead as far as finishes being used for tile pools.
This was a great conversation. Thanks again, Jimmy. I mean, your tile work is definitely set the standard in the luxury pool world. And thanks to you, Frank, for giving us some fantastic questions on this episode. If you're considering Bisazza for your next pool or outdoor project, you just heard from two of the best minds in the business.
You guys, thank you both, Joe and Frank. It was a pleasure hanging out with you guys again. And yeah, we'll be talking soon.
Yeah, Jimmy, so great to speak with you today. Always a pleasure. And Joe, thanks again for having us as part of your podcast.
That's all the time that we have left for today. Make sure to like, share, follow, and subscribe. And we'll catch you next time on another episode of Pool Magazine Podcast.
This episode of Pool Magazine Podcast is proudly brought to you by Master Pools Guild, an exclusive network of over 100 elite custom pool builders represented from all across the globe, each carefully chosen for their exceptional skills, reputation, and outstanding ability in swimming pool design and construction. Established in 1962, the MPG name has become a hallmark for elite quality pool building. We've created a network for the world's most talented pool builders to consult, inspire, and support each other. To learn more about the Guild and what membership has to offer, visit us on the web at masterpoolsguild.com.